We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? I give the call to the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Inflation has once again risen under Labor, and economists are now warning that interest rates may be forced up again, devastating news for families already cutting back this Christmas. The Prime Minister promised the Australian people that we had turned the corner on inflation, and his Treasurer assured them the government had inflation under control. Today's numbers show that Australians were misled. Prime Minister, why do Australians have to pay the price for Labor's economic failure?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. The latest figures confirm that Australian households are still facing cost of living pressures. We know that that is the case. When it comes to inflation, we also know that the work is never done, which is why my government is very focused on cost of living measures and on putting that downward pressure on inflation. Now, when you have the withdrawal of state energy subsidies, you were always going to get a lift.
Order. The Leader of the Opposition has asked her question.
But if those opposite are deeply concerned about inflation with a 3 in front of it, they must have been devastated when it had a 6 in front of it, which is what it had when they were in office. And when it had a 6 in front of it, we had the most profligate budget handed down in 2022, when it was at 6 and rising, and they poured fuel on that fire. We on this side have ensured from day one that we've been focused on delivering cost of living relief while bringing inflation down and getting the budget in better nick. That's why we produced one budget surplus and then a second budget surplus and then a reduced budget deficit. And in May of this year, the coalition managed to come up with the extraordinary formula of a commitment to increase everyone's taxes but at the same time increase the deficit. Quite an achievement from those opposite. On this side, what we have done, of course, is now 8 consecutive quarters of higher wages, and we know that people's living standards is about income in as well as payments out. We have lowered taxes for every taxpayer, not just some, as those opposite wanted. And remember the Leader of the Opposition's claims that she would roll it back, and she was against all of it when we made that announcement, that she would absolutely oppose that. And of course, we then saw, when we announced on March the 25th, another 2 income tax lowerings. We saw them oppose that as well and go to an election saying that they would increase everyone's income tax for every single Australian taxpayer. Now, we on this side will continue to do cost of living measures because we understand that we want to give people assistance.
Call to the honourable member for Moreton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering its commitment to cut student debt by 20% and make tertiary education better and fairer? What has been the response?
Give a call to the Minister for Education.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the marvellous new member for Moreton for her question. This is a special time of the year. Cricket's on the telly, even if it is for just 2 days. We've got meat on the barbie, the sound of cicadas and lawnmowers, kids opening presents, the sound of champagne corks popping and knives sharpening. That's just over there in the Liberal Party. And this year there will be the sound of something else. The sound of millions of phones beeping with a message that your student debt has been cut by 20%. Tomorrow, 1.5 million
Order,
Australians will
Barker.
have their debt cut by 20%, and next week another 1.5 million Australians will have their debt cut too. This will be the biggest cut to student debt in Australian history. We promised it, Australia voted for it, and we're delivering it. But it's not the only thing that we're delivering. Paid prac has now started. That's financial support for teaching and nursing and midwifery students, social work students while they do their practical training. Next year, more people will study medicine than ever before. We announced with the Health Minister more places for people to become doctors than ever before. And next year, 25,000 Australians will be able to do one of those free bridging courses to give them the skills that they need to get ready to start a university degree. More than ever before. Next year, more Australians will also be able to start a uni degree than ever before. And to drive real long-term reform here today, I introduced legislation to create the Australian Tertiary Education Commission. And part of its job is to break down the barrier between TAFE and university. Let me give you an example. The University of Canberra has just announced that they'll take a year off your degree if you've completed a diploma in the same area. Now, this is for nursing, for early education, for graphic design and accounting and a few other areas. This saves you time, it saves you a year off your degree, but it also saves you money, on average about $6,000 off the cost of a degree. And I want to see more examples of that, making it easier for people to get the skills and the qualifications that they want and that they need quicker and cheaper, a more joined-up system, because we know that things work better when they're united, not divided. And if you want proof of that, just look over there.
Call to the Shadow Treasurer. Order. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, today's ABS data shows inflation continues to accelerate under this government. Meanwhile, the Treasurer's spending spree continues, forcing the RBA to keep mortgage rates on hold indefinitely. 29 days before Christmas, what does the Prime Minister have to say to struggling mortgage holders facing no rate relief in sight?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. In 2025, there have indeed been 3 interest rate cuts, and that has provided real relief for people. And, of course, 2 of those are after the budget that was handed down on March 25th. And we know that those opposite have spoken about the culture of dependency when it comes to providing assistance for Australians. So, in the Coalition's opinion, if you're an Australian who is getting cost of living help, we know that you're opposed to that. As working in the public sector, well, we know that you're opposed to them continuing to work in the public sector. Or if you're working in essential services, you're an economic burden and you're bad for our national character. They think that Australians' wages, Australians' jobs and support for Australians deserves to be cut. That's really what they're saying in their subliminal message, or not so subliminal, when they speak about the culture of dependency. Remember, Joe Hockey, when he was here, had similar language when he came to office.
Order. The members on my left.
The lifters and leaners. For those opposite, they think everyone but them is a leaner. They think that. Well, we don't think that.
Order.
But who are the Australians they're attacking? Pensioners and people caring for a relative or young kids? People getting study allowance at uni or rent assistance? It's the nurses, teachers, doctors, public servants, all getting support, the ADF
Prime Minister
personnel.
will pause. Order. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition is entitled to raise his point of order in silence, and I want to hear it.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It goes to relevance. The question referenced the Treasurer's spending spree and the RBA, therefore, not providing relief as a result, and inviting the Prime Minister to address that issue, not to try to make things up about the coalition.
The Prime Minister did address that at the beginning of the question, and his order talking about spending. He's obviously not agreeing with the context of the question, so he's obviously providing information about why he disagrees with it and giving some contrast. So he is being directly relevant because the beginning part of the question, he tackled your nub of it straight away. So if he hadn't done that, we're just going to make sure he's being directly relevant. He has been. He won't be able to talk about the opposition. He hasn't been doing that for the entirety, but he's in order now.
Thank you. But when you're talking about spending, which is what the question went to, and the coalition say that there's too much spending, they've got to say what it is that they'll cut, what it is that is wasteful. And the leader here has actually said what she thinks is wasteful when she spoke about the culture of dependency. So all those people, for all those
the member
people,
for Longman
your wages are welfare and your job is a cop-out, according to those opposite. Now, we've heard it all before. They wanted to sack 46,000 public servants at the last election. They wanted people to stop working from home. We on this side want people to earn more, and we want people to keep more of what they earn.
Order. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Bass.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. What do today's inflation figures tell us, and how do the Albanese Labor government's efforts to provide cost of living help for people doing it tough compare to other approaches?
The call to the Treasurer.
Thanks,
Order.
Mr. Speaker.
I'm going to deal with that interjection from the member for Bowman. I'm sick and tired of people saying about reading. Everyone reads statements in this House, including the people who ask questions. Order. Order. Just no more interjections, and particularly when ministers are reading or everybody. I read things all the time. I read things into the House. Just show a bit of respect to everyone asking and answering questions. No more interjections like that. The Treasurer has the call.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the member for Bass for her question, but also for the massive contribution she's already making as a new member of this place. And with your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, can I acknowledge my mate, the Minister for Infrastructure's brother, is in the House. Michael is in the House, and his wife Karen. Welcome here from the member for Corangamite's electorate as well. Thanks for the wonderful job that you did, helping to raise the Minister for Infrastructure. Now, Mr. Speaker, new figures from the ABS did show today that prices were steady in the month of October, but did tick up through the year in the inflation figures, Mr. Speaker. And as the Prime Minister acknowledged a moment ago, as I acknowledged earlier on, the annual result is higher than we would like, but it is much, much lower than what we inherited from the coalition when we came to office. Now, the flat result in October, the 0.0 inflation result in October, was driven by falls in electricity and fuel prices and a moderation in housing costs. But there was a tick-up in the annual number, and that in part reflects temporary factors such as the timing of those state energy rebates and also volatile items such as travel prices. Now, again, as the Prime Minister and I have both said today, this is why it's so important that we continue to responsibly roll out the cost of living relief that those opposite oppose. Mr. Speaker, it's why it's so important that we've been able to improve the budget compared to the mess that we inherited from those opposite. It's why it's so important that we're rolling out those tax cuts, we're rolling out the cost of living relief, we're strengthening Medicare to try and ease some of the pressure that we acknowledge that Australians are still feeling around the kitchen table, Mr. Speaker. Now, as I understand it, Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Treasurer gave a little speech about some of these issues a moment ago, Mr. Speaker. Now, we've heard these kinds of speeches before. The speech that the member for Fairfax gave sounded exactly like the speeches the member for Hume used to give. But whatever speeches they give down the road, Mr Speaker, they can't obscure the fact that when they were in office, they delivered nothing but deficits. They doubled the debt even before COVID, Mr Speaker. They had spending as a share of the economy up around a third of the economy, and we've spent a great deal of time and effort cleaning up the mess that we inherited in the budget. A couple of surpluses, a smaller deficit, $200 billion less Liberal debt, saving on interest costs, $100 billion in savings, Mr Speaker. Now, the member for Fairfax might look like Scott Morrison. He might be undermining his leader like Scott Morrison did, but more and more he sounds like the member for Hume, and it didn't work out real well for the member for Hume, Mr Speaker.
Order. Before I call the member for Clare, just to remind the Treasurer not to comment on people's appearances. And I would like to welcome some people to the chamber. Present in the gallery today, the winners of the 2025 Department of House of Representatives My First Speech competition. I'd like to welcome Akila from the electorate of Durack, Olivia from the electorate of Isaacs, and Jamison from the electorate of Chipley, and their families who won this year's competition. I'm also pleased to inform the House that present in the gallery today is His Excellency Mr Nabil Habasshi, the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt, who is visiting Australia to mark the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Australia and Egypt. I'd also like to acknowledge His Excellency Mr Hani Nagi Mohammed Abdel Hamid, the Ambassador of Egypt to Australia. And also present in the gallery today are leaders from around Australia who are participating in the Australian Olympic Changemaker National Summit. Welcome to you all. Give the call to the honourable member for Calais.
To the Agriculture Minister. Our prime agricultural land is disappearing before our eyes, threatening Australia's food security. All over Australia, we're seeing residential, industrial and renewable developments on our finest farming country. Our prime agricultural land needs to be preserved for agriculture. Will you support my Protecting Australia's Prime Agricultural Land Bill, and will you come to the Calais electorate and meet with our local farmers?
Call to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry.
Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Clare for that question. Our agricultural land in Australia is incredibly important, and we believe it's important too as a government. Can I say protecting agricultural land and ensuring food security is top of our agenda in terms of making sure that Australians get access to the food that they need. Certainly these critical priorities for Australia's future prosperity, as the member would know in terms of land use, is primarily a responsibility for the states and territories, and the states and territories do regulate land use across the country. Can I say that your proposed bill does seek to override those laws that do provide the states, raising significant property rights and constitutional concerns? Such implications do require careful consideration, can I say, to avoid unintended consequences for landholders and governments. As the member would know, Australia is in a fortunate position where we can actually feed Australia more than 2.5 times over in terms of our food production, and we can produce almost all of the food that we need in Australia. But we certainly understand food security is important, which is why we have launched a food security strategy. And just last week I announced to the members of the Food Council that will advise the government in terms of our food security going forward and develop that food security strategy for the nation.
Call to the honourable member for Sturt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering for Australians, including helping them to earn more and keep more of what they earn? How does this compare with other approaches?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Sturt for her question and for the fantastic job that she is doing, representing the people of those fine suburbs of Adelaide. Fine suburbs of Adelaide indeed, and it was my pleasure in the lead-up to May 3 to make multiple visits to the electorate of Sturt, including just a couple of days beforehand on my last visit to Adelaide, and indeed hand out how-to votes. And what those how-to votes said on May 3 and in pre-poll in the electorate of Sturt, like everywhere else, was that we wanted Australians to earn more and keep more of what they earn. And we wanted to address living standards, and we wanted to deliver on the commitments that we have made for the people of Sturt and indeed for people right across Australia, no matter where their representatives sit. So a stronger Medicare was a big commitment that we have made, with Medicare urgent care clinics being rolled out around the country, with the tripling of the bulk billing incentive, fully funded schools and free TAFE. And I met one of the teachers from Adelaide just yesterday who came to Canberra to say thank you for finally fulfilling the Gonski vision that was there for all to see more than a decade ago. But it took the election of a Labor government and this Education Minister to make sure that it was delivered in partnership with every state and territory government, coalition and Labor right across the country. Free TAFE. Now, some people reckon that you don't value something if it's free. Well, there's more than 700,000 Australians benefit from free TAFE because we want to make sure in all of our policies that we have an economy that works for people, not the other way around. And when it comes to helping Australians earn more, we've had a 15% wage increase for childcare workers, a 15% wage increase for aged care workers, 4 consecutive increases to the minimum wage, same job, same pay, lifting wages by tens of thousands of dollars in some cases for workers in mining, meat processing, aviation and construction. And, of course, soon delivering a world-first agreement for gig workers, decent pay for thousands of DoorDash and Uber Eats drivers, and, importantly, better conditions to keep them safe. So our commitments are very clear. Now, the Coalition have done everything they could to stop this. They, of course, had low wages. It's a deliberate design feature of their economic policy. The contrast is clear. Only Labor wants people to earn more and keep more of what they earn.
Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, and I refer to reports that in his capacity as full-time COP President and an Energy Minister working part-time, he has signed Australia up to a statement which would phase out the import, export and usage of gas. Is this government policy, or is this just the first of many examples where what the minister says when he works part-time on Australia's energy grid is in direct contradiction with what he decides as full-time COP President?
Give a call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I'm very grateful to the Leader of the Opposition for the question. And the Leader of the Opposition asked it in 2 parts, and I'll answer in 2 parts. Firstly, she referred to the Declaration on Transition Away from Fossil Fuels, and she asked if that is government policy. Yes, it is. And it has been since the 10th of November 2023, Mr Speaker, when Australia agreed with the Pacific on that exact language at the Pacific Island Leaders Forum, that actually what would be a good thing for the world and for our country is for more and cheaper renewable energy to increasingly replace fossil fuels, which is more expensive and less reliable. So that is not a revelation, and the Declaration says we're for a just, orderly and equitable transition away from fossil fuels. Are you against the just part, the orderly part, the equitable part, or the transition part? I'm not sure. Now, all the above. Now, the Leader of the Opposition then went on to repeat her false allegation, which she has done now on multiple occasions, that somehow the office of President of the COP negotiations is full-time. Mr Speaker, let me put it in the clearest possible way. The Leader of the Opposition is either deliberately or not deliberately misleading the House, because it is not true, has never been true. Now, Mr Speaker, the office of the—
Order. The manager will state his point of order.
Member knows he can't make that allegation of deliberately misleading, and he needs to withdraw it.
He was asking a question. He didn't say that she was misleading the opposition. But order. I want to deal with this. Just language, trust me, is very important here. So if the minister can stray away from making any reflections on members, I know he did it in a question-type way, but even that's close to the wind. So the manager is correct Order. The member for Gippsland, running commentary, you won't be here much more to give it. Order. Don't look at your watch. Okay. Order. So just caution the minister. Back to the question.
Certainly, Mr Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition asked me about full-time and part-time, and I'm more than happy to deal with that because the position of COP President for the last 10 COPs has been held by a Cabinet member continuing in that role. That's the way the position is designed. Last year, Minister Babayev, the Minister for the Environment of Azerbaijan. The year before that, Minister Al-Jaber, the Minister of Industry. Before that, Minister Shukri, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt. Before that, Minister Schmidt, the Minister for the Environment of Chile. Before that, the Minister Kircher, the Minister for Climate Change of Poland. Before that, Prime Minister Bainimarama of Fiji was the COP President while he was Prime Minister. Before that, Minister Mazua, the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Morocco. Before that, Minister Fabius of France, the Foreign Affairs Minister of France. All Cabinet Ministers who were COP Presidents. Now, what cultural cringe that somehow they can all do it, but Australia can't? I mean, what we want is more influence for our country. They want less. They want less influence for Australia. How unpatriotic can you be? Why don't you want your country to have a bigger role in the world? Why are you so anti-Australian? Why can't you be proud that your country can play a leading role in international negotiations? This is a Leader of the Opposition who is so enthralled of Sky After Dark that she can't even know an international law when she concluded. Sees one.
Look, I'm just going to ask everyone to show a little more restraint. There's far too much energy during that answer and question. So if everyone, the House can settle, we'll hear from the member for Griffith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government strengthening Medicare by delivering cheaper medicines and providing real cost of living relief to Australians? Are there any risk to these important measures?
Give the call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker, and thanks to the member for Griffith. She knows that the PBS is one of Australia's great social programs. For more than 80 years now, it's guaranteed access to Australians to the best medicines in the world at affordable prices. And since we came to government, Mr Speaker, we have made more than 350 new or expanded listings on the PBS. This month we added a new treatment for multiple myeloma called Darzalex, which is the first new treatment for that condition for 12 years, Mr Speaker. Around 2,600 Australians are diagnosed with multiple myeloma every year, and the stakeholder, Myeloma Australia, has been lobbying for this listing for years now. And their legendary ambassador, we all know, Sandy Roberts, described the listing as absolutely fantastic news. Now, until now, this treatment cost $440,000 for a course of treatment, but now 1,400 Australians every year will be able to get access to it at affordable PBS prices, Mr Speaker. And we're making those skip prices even cheaper. Already, Australians have saved $1.9 billion at the pharmacy counter because of our cheaper medicines measures. Pensioners have received...
Order. Members on my left will cease interjecting. Members on my left. Order. Members on my left. Order. No. Members on my left. Order. No. Members on my left. Members on my left. Oh, Members, the Leader of the Nationals, order. Order. The House is going to continue. We are in order. The Minister in continuation.
Thank you, Speaker. Pensioners have received 83 million additional free scripts because of our changes to the safety net threshold, and in 5 weeks' time, PBS scripts will be capped at just $25, the same price they were back in 2004. Now, while the opposition opposed many of those measures last term, Mr Speaker, they promised in May that they would support all of these election commitments. But I regret to say, Mr Speaker, that risks to that are emerging. Now, in between organising a very successful drinks event on Monday night, Mr Speaker, the very busy member for Lindsay managed to squeeze in an exclusive interview with The Australian where she staked out a position on every single policy position except communications, Mr Speaker, except communications. And she said this. She said there was too much matching. She said too much matching, and she thought the Liberal Party should lean into health policy a little bit more. Well, I tell you this, Mr Speaker, we remember, and Australians know what it means when the Liberal Party says they're going to lean into health policy, Mr Speaker. We remember when the Leader of the Opposition leaned into health policy and extended the Medicare rebate freeze for 4 more years. They are an absolute risk to a stronger Medicare, an absolute risk to cheaper medicines, no matter which of them you pick, the member for Lindsay or the member for Hume, they're all a risk.
Order. There is far too much noise. The Leader of the Nationals, one more interjection and he won't be here. Everyone's going to settle because I want to hear. No. The member for Page. No, the member for Page won't get the call unless he leaves his phone. Yeah. No, we can wait as long. We're waiting. Order. We're just. Order. Members on my right. Order. The member for Page has the call.
Thank you, Speaker, and I hope the sun shines soon. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. The Energy Minister, who in his part-time role just confirmed he signed up to an agreement which compels Australia to phase out 3 of our top 10 exports, including gas, coal and crude petroleum, with a combined value of $163 billion in trade. When asked yesterday about this action by the full-time COP President, the Minister for Trade said, quote, "I don't tell him how to run his portfolio. He certainly doesn't tell me how to run mine." Whilst working as a part-time minister, did the full-time COP President consult the Minister for Trade before signing this executive order?
Order. 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 Members on my left, we were well past the time I could rule this question out of order because there was no question. It's well past the time. We're just going to take the House to order. And if people continue, they won't be here. I'm going to ask the Minister to continue.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Mr Speaker.
Order. The member for Hume will— No, I've just been very clear. The member for Hume will leave the chamber under 94A. Yeah. Look. Order. Minister in continuation.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The honourable member asks— I thank the honourable member for his question. And he asked me about the transition away from fossil fuels, which, as I said, the leaders of the Pacific, Australia, New Zealand and Pacific nations, agreed on the 10th of November 2023. It was then reflected in the COP decision language later that year in Dubai. and that is something that was reflected in that COP decision. Yes, Australia did join with other countries in the declaration on the transition away from fossil fuels. I can understand while this is offensive to those opposite because it says, and I quote, "We reaffirm that the best available science must guide the implementation of the transition." That's what Australia agreed with those countries. I know the word science triggers those opposite because they find that offensive. Other countries that called for a roadmap for a transition away from fossil fuel at the COP last week in Belém include Denmark, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, the Republic of Korea, which I know also announced they are closing all coal-fired power stations in 2040. Those well-known, those terrible woke warriors in the Republic of Korea who are closing all their coal-fired power stations earlier than Australia, and the United Kingdom, amongst around 80 countries. Around 80 countries called for a roadmap for transition away from fossil fuels. So I know that those opposite aren't real good on international engagement. I know they couldn't get a Chinese minister to return their calls for 2 years. I know that they saw the Pacific as something that they just didn't care about, and they lost control of the geopolitical environment in the Pacific, something this government has turned around. But we are acting in good company internationally, and will continue to do so because we will express our support for things like reaffirming that the best available science must guide the implementation of the transition. And we also saw the Prime Minister acting in good company at the G20 on the weekend, something that a Prime Minister Lee could not have signed up to, with the 19 countries, the 19 biggest economies that the Prime Minister was able to sign up to, with her policy Minister Lee, if there was such an unfortunate event, could not sign up to.
Order. Give the call to the honourable member for Reid.
My question is to the Minister for Defence. How is the Albanese government continuing to stand with Ukraine against Russia's invasion, including through military support? Why is a consistent approach so important?
The call to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence.
Well, I thank the member for her question. Last night, on behalf of the Prime Minister, I attended a virtual meeting of the Coalition of the Willing in support of Ukraine, a group of 35 countries, largely NATO, but including both New Zealand and Australia. Present was President Zelensky, as was the US Secretary of State Rubio, both of whom briefed the meeting about the recent peace talks in Geneva over the course of the weekend. Now, all of us want to see peace, and we are deeply grateful to the efforts of the Trump administration in seeking to bring about peace. This is obviously really difficult work. Any peace must respect the sovereignty of Ukraine. They are the innocent party, the victim of Russian aggression. And central to this is the security guarantees which will deter future Russian aggression, which has been at the heart of much of the discussion of the Coalition of the Willing. And from the very outset, our Prime Minister has made clear that wherever this lands, Australia will play its part, because the Albanese government's support for Ukraine has been steadfast and it has been consistent. And fundamental to that has been supporting the Coalition of the Willing, which is about ensuring the long-term security of Ukraine. I mean, for us, this has been a matter of principle. It can never be about politics. Now, in the meantime, in the last 48 hours, we have seen a deadly and a despicable Russian attack on civilian apartments and infrastructure in Ukraine. And last night's meeting condemned that attack, but it is a reminder that in the prosecution of this war right now, we must stay the course with Ukraine. In the coming weeks, the final tranche of the 49 Australian gifted Abrams tanks will arrive in Ukraine. During the course of this year, more than 200 Australian personnel have been involved in the deployment of our E-7 Wedgetail and the training of the Ukrainian armed forces. And since the beginning of this conflict, we have provided $1.5 billion of support to Ukraine, and I can announce that very shortly we will be announcing our next package of support for Ukraine. Because what is at stake here is the global rules-based order. And there are not many orders, there is one. And it is as relevant to us here in the Indo-Pacific as it is to those who are in Eastern Europe. Now, over the course of the last 4 years, the people of Ukraine have been absolutely inspirational. And the Albanese Labor government and the Australian people will stand by their side for as long as it takes.
The call to the honourable member for Groom.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Whilst working part-time as a minister, the full-time COP president signed Australia up to an international agreement which would see crucial industries phased out of existence. The Minister for Resources has previously said, quote, Australia's coal and gas resources are essential for energy security, stability and reliability both domestically and across the Asia-Pacific and will be needed for decades. Whilst working as a part-time minister, did the full-time COP president consult the Minister for Resources before signing this executive order?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his question, and I thank a coalition member for the bravery of asking a question about unity in this House, Mr Speaker. That shows considerable fortitude on his behalf. And the honourable member has been quite active in the discussions on that side about the future of the Liberal Party and the coalition. Now, the honourable member asked me about a declaration which Australia did sign up to on the transition that's underway around the world, and apparently this is controversial. Well, I might ask, given the honourable member asked me who I consulted with, I'm not sure if he checked with the Shadow Minister for Energy, who said on the 11th of November 2021, we understand the world is moving, that the world is transitioning, we understand that transition is taking place, we understand that new fuels and new energy sources will be required, and we want to make sure that as the world transitions, we're very much part of that. Well said. Well said. That's effectively what I said, or the Leader of the Opposition herself, who said just last year, I'm very pro-renewables because we all need to make the renewable energy transition, said the Leader of the Opposition. I could go on. I could go on. Shall I go on? Okay. The Leader of the Opposition said, and there's always a lot of common sense, but you always find with country people, no one is saying we shouldn't transition to renewables. Quite right. And we're saying we should transition to renewables. And United Kingdom's saying we should transition to renewables.
The Leader of the Opposition. That's okay. I'm trying to take a point of order, that's all, from one of your members. The member for Groom will raise his point of order.
Thank you. On relevance, Speaker, there is nothing in this question about the opposition. El Presidente is off on a frolic on this one. I bring him back to the question.
Resume your seat. Order. I'd like the minister to return to the question he was asked about. He wasn't asked about alternative policies or anything. And before I deal with that, was an abuse of the standing orders. The member for Groom will also leave the chamber under 94A. No, we're not. I don't know how clear I can make it. I don't want to get a point where I'm not taking points of order, as has happened before. I'll ask everyone to be reasonable. Minister, in continuation.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. So perhaps it will be helpful to the opposition if I explain what a transition actually is. It's a gradual move towards more renewable energy, Mr Speaker. It's happening in Australia. It's happening in Australia, with October being the first month in Australian history that we got 50% of our electricity from renewables. That's what a transition looks like. It takes time. As it happens, the same transition is happening around the world. Now, for the first time, globally, we have more energy from electricity than coal. That's the first time that's happened. It just happened in the first 6 months of this year. Now, The member asked me about the Minister for Resources and I. The Minister for Resources and I agree entirely. We're working closely together on this transition because we agree that as that transition occurs, we do need gas as a backup for renewables because it is a flexible fuel. We agree that we need gas to help with heavy industry. We agree that we need gas for those 5 million homes that use it for home heating. The Minister for Resources and I more than agree. We're working closely together on the gas market review, which we'll be saying more about imminently, Mr Speaker. So that's what policy work looks like on the side of the House that agrees on the fundamentals about climate change. Those opposite can't even agree on whether climate change is real. So I don't think we need any advice from anybody on that side of the House because, Mr Speaker, we have been dealing with 10 years of denial and neglect.
From the honourable member for Bean.
Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Communications. Australia's world-leading social media law starts in 2 weeks from today. How is the Albanese Labor government helping Australians prepare for this important change?
Give a call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Bean for his question and for his help introducing me to the tremendous students of St Mary MacKillop's College here in Canberra. Mr Speaker, today marks 2 weeks until the minimum age to have a social media account in Australia rises to 16. And I tell you, Mr Speaker, Australian parents are ready. Australian parents are ready for a break from the predatory algorithms and the toxic popularity meters that keep their kids doom-scrolling for hours on end. They are ready for kids to have the opportunity to switch off and to build their identity online. Parents are ready not to be the bad guys when they tell their children that they can't have social media because it is the law. We have always said, Mr Speaker, that there will be challenges for December 10, which is why the Albanese government has been on a mission to build awareness and trust in this law. We have invested more than $10 million in a national advertising campaign, and in the 5 weeks since that campaign has started, we have seen a 1,441% increase in traffic, with almost 600,000 Australians accessing the helpful resources on eSafety's website. I have spoken to young people from the member for Clark's electorate in Tasmania, from the member for Maribyrnong's electorate in Victoria, to the member for Bean's electorate in Canberra, all the way across to the member for Forrest's electorate in Western Australia, as we've all been through, yes, and we have answered their genuine questions about the law. And after we've sat down and spoken, here is what some of them have said. 15-year-old Peyton said, "I actually think it's a good thing, and you'd be surprised by how many teenagers my age and younger think that too, because it will help reduce cyberbullying and it will protect our mental health. It will be hard at first, but in the long run, it will be good for us." 17-year-old Hayden said, "This law is a brilliant step forward to reclaim the well-being of young Australians in their developmental years. Australia continues to be a trailblazer here." Hayden and Peyton, I couldn't agree more. And despite the fact that we are receiving threats and legal challenges by people with ulterior motives, the Albanese government remains steadfastly on the side of parents and not of platforms. We will not be intimidated by threats. We will not be intimidated by legal challenges. We will not be intimidated by big tech. On behalf of Australian parents, we stand firm.
Give a call to the honourable member for Indi.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, 16 days of activism is a powerful and unified campaign to eliminate gender-based violence. Family violence is 3 times more likely to occur in families where there is problem gambling. In 2024, the government's rapid review of evidence-based approaches to prevent gender-based violence backed up the Murphy report with a recommendation to restrict gambling advertising, leading to a total ban. Prime Minister, when will the government act to ban gambling advertising?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Indi for her question and for the way that she engages constructively with the government in representing her electorate and her political viewpoint. I do want to say, take the opportunity, because the question provides it for me, to mark what is day 2 into that 16 days of activism to end gender-based violence. Whilst this is a campaign for 16 days, we know that I hope everyone in this House can agree we need to campaign on this for 365 days a year, because every death or every act of violence against a woman is one too many. As leaders in this place, we must renew our unwavering commitment to ending violence, because any death of a woman is unacceptable, and as Australians we mourn every one of the lives that have been lost this year. We know that for every life that we lose, there are many more women and children whose lives are marred by violence, abuse or assault every day. And we must look to where we're falling short and find new ways of doing better. Yesterday, Minister Plibersek announced an almost 40% funding boost for 1800 Respect, so that when people reach out for help, it's there to help them. We have a $4 billion national plan to end violence against women and children agreed with the states and territories with a special meeting of the National Cabinet that I convened. That's why we've boosted and secured funding for frontline services and delivered more financial and housing support for women and children escaping domestic violence, because women shouldn't have to choose between poverty and violence. Too often, when women remain in violent relationships and are asked, why didn't you leave? It's because they didn't have anywhere to go. That's why we created a special stream under the Housing Australia Future Fund as well. We know that the causes of violence, as
the Prime Minister is just going to pause. The member for Indi asked about a pretty important topic, and the Prime Minister is giving a lot of information to the House. He is being directly relevant. So the member for Indi.
It's on relevance, and I appreciate the Prime Minister's response in regard to gender-based violence, which I know we all care about and the Prime Minister deeply cares about, and the government is doing a lot to respond. But the question went to the relationship between gambling, advertising and gender-based violence.
The Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I am responding very directly to the question, and there is no question as well that the cause of violence, it can never be excused. But in many cases, that is one of the issues, along with alcohol abuse, along with so many issues that cause violence, for people to put up their hand and say that is why. The truth is it can never be excused. That's the truth. And the truth is that all of us, particularly men, have a particular responsibility because we must all know, people, when you look at the statistics, who are our friends or our neighbours who engage in this sort of activity. Look, I'll continue to engage constructively. One of the reasons why we are doing measures, just to name one of the measures that we're putting in place, that we have put in place to deal with problem gambling that's related to people being in a cycle where they feel like they can't get out, is BetStop, the National Self-Exclusion Register. Now, that has seen 51,000 total registrations, of whom 38% of people who feel like they can't possibly control it, have chosen a lifetime ban. That's one of the reasons why we did that. That's part of the motivation. But I'll continue to work constructively with the member for Indi on all of these issues, and I thank her for the question.
The call to the member for Chisholm.
Thank you so much, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering important infrastructure projects that will improve the lives of Australians? What other approaches to infrastructure have been put forward to the government?
Call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Chisholm for the question. She represents a beautiful part of the world. In fact, my brother Mike and I grew up and were born there before we moved to Ballarat for study and work consecutively. So lovely to have the member for Chisholm asking that question. It's really great timing to talk about infrastructure because this really has been a year of delivery. Last week we officially opened the Parkes bypass in New South Wales. I'm going to tell you, this project takes the thousands of trucks that travel from Melbourne to Brisbane on the Newell Highway out of the centre of town, a project the Parkes community have been calling for over 60 years, delivered by the Albanese and Minns governments. In June, I joined the Prime Minister and Minister Collins alongside the Tasmanian government to officially open the new Bridgewater Bridge, a major crossing of the Derwent that connects Hobart to the north. And then in October, we got one step closer to completing Perth's Metronet project when we opened the Byford extension. Just Midlands is left to go. And of course, we have had to find hundreds of millions of dollars extra to actually deliver those projects because they were shortchanged by those opposite. And of course, there's a lot of fantastic projects underway across the country. We've got the Torrens to Darlington project in South Australia. We'll complete the north-south road link through Adelaide, reducing the time people spend at traffic lights, and the TMBs are being erected on site as we speak. We've of course got the Northern Territory, where we're about to start upgrading the Victoria and Barclay highways. And of course, we are investing an additional $7.2 billion in the Bruce Highway to upgrade that, the major artery that connects both ends of the highway in Queensland. It's a total of $17 billion that we're spending on that corridor, and construction has started on that new $7.2 billion. And councils, of course, are upgrading regional roads across the country thanks to the doubling of Roads to Recovery funding that happened under this government. But of course, in my home state of Victoria, the Victorian government was never really meant to go it alone when it came to the Melbourne Metro Tunnel project. When the Prime Minister held this portfolio, we committed $3 billion to the Metro Tunnel. But under Tony Abbott, this divisive and divided Liberal Party cut that $3 billion out of Victoria. And we've seen this project now on Sunday will be opening, and I commend the Victorian government for completing it and going it alone. But we know, as a government, we are focused on delivery and not division. This federal government is back in the rail game, well and truly, investing in the projects that all Australians need.
Call to the honourable member for Riverina.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Minister, I refer to reports that imported materials from China used to build wind towers in Australia contain asbestos. What action is the minister taking to address this?
The call to the Minister. Order. The call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
I thank my honourable friend for the question, and the Minister for Workplace Relations may care to add to the answer after this. I am aware that asbestos has been found in 3S industry lift brake pads used in a Goldwind Australia project, Cattle Hill Wind Farm in Tasmania, which was completed in 2020.
Order. Members on my right.
I'm aware that it's a very serious matter, Mr Speaker, and I'm just providing a factual update to the honourable member. I take him in good faith that he asked the question in good faith. I'm providing him with the facts in return. A program of further checks is underway by state regulators to determine if other wind farms are impacted. They may well be. There are a number of wind farms that use 3S industry lifts, and 3S industry lifts doesn't just do wind turbines. They provide lifts for any high infrastructure. They provide industrial lifts. So obviously they apply in wind turbines, but they can also apply in other industrial facilities. Work is being conducted to replace the affected parts under the comprehensive safety management plans. An independent industrial hygienist have been assessing the risk. It's the responsibility of importers and exporters to ensure that they do not import or export prohibited goods such as asbestos. So we are currently working with the states. The state regulators are the primary regulators of this, but of course I'm sure the Minister for Workplace Relations would tell us if she was asked that we are working through WorkSafe Australia and any other agencies with the states to ensure that every possible check this is being undertaken, because this is an historical matter which deserves to be thoroughly investigated. The workers of Australia deserve nothing less, and we will ensure that that's the case.
Give the call to the honourable member for Whitlam.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing, Homelessness and Cities. How is the Albanese Labor government providing more opportunities and delivering for first home buyers? What other approaches to housing has the government been asked to consider?
Give the call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
I thank the member for Whitlam for her question. She is such a fighter for first home buyers in her community, Speaker. And our government has now been able to help more than 1,400 of her constituents get into home ownership, with many more to come. Speaker, the long-term solution to Australia's 40-year-old housing crisis is we've got to build, build, build. And that's what the majority of our government's historic $43 billion housing package are focused on, building more homes for Australians. And our policies are having real impact. Well over 500,000 homes have been built around Australia since we were elected to government, and housing approvals are up 15% on where they were last year. But, Speaker, we recognise that Australians need help with housing right now, and that's what we're delivering. At the election, we promised a vital reform to allow any first home buyer in the country to get into the market with a 5% deposit and our government's backing. And we delivered on that promise, Speaker, 3 months earlier than we said we would. Now, Speaker, since the expansion of the 5% deposit program, 16,500 Australians have bought their first home with our government's backing. And I want to talk to you about Dean, who is one such person who lives in the member for Whitlam's electorate. Dean works in a warehouse in the Southern Highlands. He has been renting for years, and he never thought that he'd be able to save up the 20% deposit that was necessary. He's had caring responsibilities with his disabled mother, and he just was not able to get the money together. But the 5% deposit program has completely changed that for him, Speaker. So a few weeks ago, Dean and his wife bought their first home. They are so proud and they are so relieved to have a place where they can set down roots and spend their hard-earned dollars paying off their own mortgage and not someone else's. Now, Speaker, the member asked me about alternatives, and I want Dean and his family and every one of the people who have bought with our 5% deposit program to know that if it were up to the coalition, they would not be homeowners right now. Speaker, the Liberals have described our expansion of this scheme as bizarre and ridiculous and said that this is a scheme which supports the families of billionaires. Well, Speaker, I want them to know that Dean is not the child of billionaires. He is a warehouse worker from the regions who grew up in public housing in a single-parent family, and fighting for Australians like him is why my political party exists. Now, Speaker, we will continue to deliver housing supports for Australians, but the Liberals are as hopelessly divided on housing as they are on every other major policy issue facing the country. They cannot decide whether they support or oppose supports for home ownership, and the coalition do not have a single sensible thing to say about what I believe to be the most important social and economic problem facing our country. And of course, Speaker, it's unsurprising given that for most of the time they were in government, they didn't.
Call to the member for Mayo.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The CSIRO has recently announced 350 science and research jobs will go, and this is on top of the 800-plus CSIRO support roles that have already been cut this year. And this is due to government funding not keeping up with costs. Will the government immediately invest the $75 million needed to stop the loss of these important jobs in science and research?
Give the call to the Honourable the Attorney-General representing the Minister for Science.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for her very important question. As she knows, the CSIRO is an asset to our nation and all Australians should be proud of it. And we would all want a strong and sustainable CSIRO that's aligned with our national science priorities, and that would be in the national interest. Mr Speaker, there has been a decision taken by the government through the MyEFO process to provide additional funding for the CSIRO, the details of which will be communicated to the public at the appropriate time. The CSIRO continues to receive significant base funding of close to $1 billion per annum from the government, and I assure the member this hasn't changed. Decisions on staffing and the prioritisation of resources are a matter for the CSIRO's board and management, and the government respects the CSIRO's operational independence. Ultimately, their aim, like ours, is for the CSIRO to remain strong and sustainable over the long term. And I know we take this seriously, Mr Speaker, as I know the member does, because we all value the contribution that CSIRO scientists make to the nation. We want the CSIRO's research facilities to be safe, fit for purpose and capable of securing Australia's critical scientific capabilities.
Call to the honourable member for Moore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering higher wages for Australian workers, and are there any risks?
Call to the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Well, I'd like to thank the member for Moore for that question and, of course, his decades of passionate advocacy for working people in this country. Now, the Albanese Labor government was elected on a promise of getting wages moving, and that is exactly what we are delivering. Only Labor is committed to increasing the pay packets of working Australians. The Albanese Labor government has delivered significant changes to achieve this. We have reinvigorated enterprise bargaining, with a record number of employees now covered by enterprise agreements, which continue to be a key sources of wages growth in this country. And unlike those opposite, we proudly advocated to the Fair Work Commission for a minimum award wage increase each and every year since we've been in government, supporting almost 3 million low-paid workers. Our government took action to protect penalty rates and overtime, making sure the pay of those who work on weekends or unsociable hours do not go backwards. We introduced same job, same pay laws, and now thousands of workers are benefiting from pay increases across mining, aviation, warehousing, railway and meat processing. And our government has backed and funded wage increases for early educators and aged care workers, who are now thousands of dollars better off because this government recognised the essential work that they do. And we put the framework in place to allow for gig workers to be fairly paid, being underpaid for too long. Only this Labor government is delivering higher wages for working Australians. Now, we know there are risks, and the biggest risk is those opposite, the Liberal and National Party. Of course, the Liberal and National Party proudly boasted when they were in government that a key part of their economic architecture was to put downward pressure on wages. And more recently, the Leader of the Opposition, when asked if she would repeal our important reforms that have delivered wage increases and job security, she said she would look at it all. Does this mean the Leader of the Opposition would remove same job, same pay changes, leaving workers worse off? Would she remove minimum standards for gig workers, leaving them worse off? Would she scrap protections to penalty rates? Would she scrap pay rises for our essential aged care and early educators? We know that those opposite fought tooth and nail every single one of these reforms. But while they fight amongst themselves, we're getting on with the job of delivering to the Australian workers and making sure we're getting wages moving again.
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I ask further questions to be placed on the notice paper.
Call to the Leader of the House with papers.
Papers first.
My apologies. You will want to update the House probably more urgently with another matter.
I think members will want to know about the calendar for next year, so I'll ask leave of the House to move. I present a chart showing the proposed parliamentary sittings for 2026. Copies are being placed on the table, and I ask leave of the House to move that the proposed parliamentary sittings be agreed to.
Is leave granted?
Leave is granted.
Thank the Manager of Opposition, Mrs. the Leader of the House.
Thanks, Speaker. I move that the proposed parliamentary sittings for 2026 be agreed to. In terms of the summary, it gets us back to similar to what we've had over the last decade in non-election years, which is 18 weeks of sitting, 66 days of sitting.
question is the motion be agreed to, but I'll give the call to the Manager of Opposition Business.
Thank you, Speaker. I firstly want to acknowledge the way the government's handled the presentation of their sitting calendar this year. My office received a copy of the proposed sitting calendar at 1:43 p.m. today. That's 13 minutes before question time, and so I thank them for that 13 minutes to consider this sitting calendar and what it entails. It's disappointing we couldn't be provided with more notice, but there you have it. With all those extra staff, we were unable to get that notice earlier. Now to the substantive issues. The Leader of the House has brushed over a few things in the sitting timetable that is proposed before the House. The government's proposing that we sit 66 days next year, or just 18 weeks. With the exception of 2024, where we sat for 64 days only, you have to go back to 2020 to find another time where we sat for less days, and that was during a once-in-a-century pandemic. Put another way, the last time we sat for fewer than 66 days as a House of Representatives for a full year after an election was in 2011. And if you went back to the future, if you got in that DeLorean and you went back to 2011, who was the Leader of the House in 2011? Oh dear, oh dear, the Leader of the House. He doesn't seem to like parliamentary sitting or scrutiny of the House of Representatives. The question, though, I think this House needs to address, and I've got a solution, being a constructive opposition and taking the Leader of the Opposition's instructions to all of us to be more constructive, we are going to be more constructive. I've got a constructive solution to this issue. The question we all want to know, and the Parliament is asking the people of Australia, will the part-time Minister for Climate Change and Energy be around to attend any of these sitting days at all? And so, I move as an amendment to the motion moved by the Leader of the House, something that all members in this House can support because we all want it, that the Minister for Climate Change and Energy be required to attend each of the parliamentary sitting days in the House of Representatives during 2026.
There's only 18 weeks.
There are only 66 of them to that interjection. So therefore, this is not an onerous requirement on the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. It is such a low amount that he should be present on that 66 days to answer the questions that we have. And yes, we have a lot of questions. I'd recommend this motion to you. You want the Minister to be here? We want the Minister to be here. Who here would not like the Minister for Climate Change and Energy to be here? The member for Parramatta is not here, but it's unfair to ask this question when the member for Parramatta is not here. But I move my amendment. I encourage the Leader to support this particular motion and the bill as amended.
Member for Wannon, yeah, we've probably got a few problems with this amendment. Yeah, and I'll hear from the Leader of the House first.
Well, first of all, Mr Speaker, the reference that was made to 66 days, how far back you have to go to find less, other than last year, there's 2022, there's 2020, there's 2019, there's 2018, there's 2017.
The Leader of the House, I want to deal with the amendment first.
The amendment, I think the easiest way to save you from the ruling, and I just move the question be put.
Well, I'm not particularly happy with the amendment because it's about an individual. If you're going to, all right, put the question. Those opinions that be put, those opinions say aye. The question is that the motion be put. Yep. Those opinions say aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. Division required. Division required? Yeah, ring the bells. Yep, no problem.
to interrupt like that.
Lock the doors. The question is the question be put. The ayes are past the right of the chair and the noes to the left. Appoint the honourable members for Werriwa and Bean as tellers for the ayes, and the honourable members for Capricornia and Bowman as tellers for the noes. The result of the division is ayes 91, noes 39. The matter was resolved in the affirmative. before we go to papers, I think I'll put the question now. Those opinions say this is for the sitting pattern. Those opinions say aye, against no. I think the ayes have it. The member for Wannon was wanting to ask either me a question or someone a question.
Thanks, Speaker. I just have a question of you. During question time, there was a very unusual occurrence. The lights went out in this House, and I was just wondering whether you could report back to the House as to what happened, whether it might be to do with a minister who isn't.
You can't be heard. Yeah. The last part of the question you couldn't be heard, so that wasn't recorded. But I can advise the House in part of the question there was a power outage, brief outage at Tilapia Park substation with the order. I don't know why that's controversial, but the whole region was, for a short time, including the Senate and maintenance teams, have been resetting the infrastructure, and I thank the workers involved for such a speedy response. Called order. Give the call to the Leader of the House.
Speaker, these documents are tabled in accordance with the list circulated to the honourable members earlier today. Full details of the documents will be recorded in the votes and proceedings.
Members can leave the chamber as quickly and as quietly as possible.